Hi, once again, I'm Ginger McClure, and my research topic is dealing with the role of Puritanism in self-government in what eventually became the United States, but for my research in the New England colonies. My research will answer the following questions. What did Puritans believe was the role of a church member? How did Puritan beliefs about church membership affect views on citizenship? How were New England religious and political institutions affected by Puritan beliefs? And how did New England Puritans view their role in the establishment of a new government in England in the mid-1600s? I'm not 100% sure about that fourth question. I've got it here in my prospectus, but, well, I'll come back to that. My thesis is as follows. The distance between the Puritans in New England and religious and political leaders in England gave the Puritans freedom to establish exactly the type of society they wanted. As they developed a church in which the congregation made important decisions such as the selection of ministers, the close relationship between church and state encouraged ideas about self-government to spread to the political arena as well. So I plan to start my paper with some background. The development of Puritanism during the English Reformation, how Puritans or Congregationalists saw the church hierarchy differently than more moderate leaders of the Church of England. Congregationalists believed that a church hierarchy wasn't necessary because Christians could work out their own relationship with God. I'll go from there into why Puritan settlers left England and eventually settled in Massachusetts due to, for lack of a long explanation, unfriendly to Puritan situation in England, and then the goals of those first New England Puritans. For that, I'm going to look at a primary source by John Winthrop in 1629, where he actually spells out what the goals of the Puritans should be in the New World. I'm focusing on the goal of establishing a religious community, but there are others as well, including evangelizing Indians, etc. So the next part of my paper then will be the establishment of the New England church and government. And I'm going to start that section with the differences between the beliefs of Puritans on either side of the Atlantic as New England Puritans begin to develop their own views once they are separated from Puritans in the mother country. So I have a primary source by John Allen and Thomas Shepard that addresses some of those differences. The English Puritans or maybe the Church of England, I need to look that up again, sent a letter with 9 questions to the New England Church. And the New England Church answered those 9 theological questions. John Ball wrote a response with some disagreements, and then my primary source is Allen and Shepard's response to John Ball's response. And you can see in there that there are several differences in their views. Like, for example, the New England Puritans believed that it was important for the conversion experience that there be a public confession of sin and repentance in front of the church body. And John Ball said that wasn't necessary. So Allen and Shepard justified their views on topics such as that. So I'm kind of showing how they're diverging. I am planning to have a section on the establishment of the New England Church, how it actually developed, and the roles of church members, which will also demonstrate the close relationship between church and state in New England. Most of my primary sources are sermons about civil government. So there was no separation of church and state. Some historians even call early New England a theocracy. And then that section will end with evidence of self-government in early New England, showing that there were occasions where the citizens of New England chose their leaders. The last part of my paper is going to move into how the English Civil War impacted Puritan views, how the New England Puritans felt about the Civil War, the interregnum, and the Restoration. I have a primary source by John Eliot that gives, the source was written during the Civil War but published during the interregnum, and shows what he believes England should be doing to set up a more godly government. He spells it out very specifically, and that also leads into, that source will also help with the New England Puritans' impact on England. Because the New England Puritans had already set up a religious community, they saw themselves as experts who could then be advisors and role models for the post-execution of Charles I government in England. And then how all of that, I'll close up this section with how all of that impacted the government of New England. Now, I say all of that since I turned in my prospectus. I've been wondering if I've taken my time period too long. I do plan for the focus of my paper to be the founding of the New England colonies in the 1630s. This jumps us up a couple of decades if I go into the Civil War. And so I'm already planning for that to be a smaller part of my paper, but I might find that I need to eliminate that completely and just go more in depth into the things that establish the founding. My conclusion discusses how the modern ideas of self-determination and republican rule haven't developed. Those are not going to develop until until the late 17 and early 1800s. So when we talk about self-government in Puritan New England, it's not going to look like what we think of after the American Revolution. But Puritan New England did already have elements of self-government and early opinions that citizens should choose their political leaders developed directly from Puritan ideas about the role of church members and church members making important decisions about the church, including choosing their own ministers. And then if I keep it in there, changes in England that resulted from the Civil War and its aftermath encouraged and solidified those views about self-government in New England. So I have right now 6 primary sources. Depending on how I change things, I may have to add or replace some. And then I have about 7 secondary sources, including the Rule of Moderation, which we read for this class, but some articles that deal with specific parts of my paper, as well as some books that deal with the topic more in general. But what I found is this is not a real common area of study. I'm kind of excited about that. It makes my research a little bit harder, but while historians have touched on different parts of my research, just looking at the impact of Puritanism on self-government in the New England colonies, I have not found a source that just deals with that directly in the way that I hope to. So hopefully that makes my research significant generally. To me personally, it's significant because the founding of the Puritan colonies in Massachusetts and New England are something that I teach, and having a deeper understanding of the impacts of Puritanism on that region will help me be a better teacher of U.S. history. Thank you for listening.